Welcome to the Session 3 training for From Rebel to Hope. Today's session is an important one because it teaches participants how to begin the process of recognizing and understanding their emotions. A lot of trauma recovery is about helping the mind and body work together again. When we don't understand our emotions or we feel overwhelmed by them, it becomes very difficult to process trauma or move towards healing. So this session is designed to help people recognize, name, and accept their emotions without judgment, which is something many trauma-informed approaches use because it reduces emotional overwhelm and builds resilience. The material you'll need for this session is the Wise Mind diagram from your facilitator's packet. At the beginning of the session, you'll start by simply welcoming the group and reminding them why we're gathering together. You might say something like, "We're here to help learn simple tools that help us make sense of what we've been through and to help our bodies and minds respond with a little more care and understanding." The goal here isn't to be formal, but to help people feel oriented and safe as they settle in. We don't know what they're coming from, so we want to create a grounding and safe environment. From there, you'll take a few minutes to check in about the previous week. You can ask questions like, how did the deep breathing go for you this week? Or what was it like to write about a challenging experience? Some people may have found those practices helpful, others may have struggled, and some might have not tried them at all. All of these responses are okay. What matters is that participants have space to share honestly without feeling judged or pressured. This check-in is important because reflection helps people notice their own experiences and build awareness over time. It also reinforces that growth isn't measured by doing everything perfectly, but by showing up and paying attention to what's happening inside. As you listen, your role is simply to normalize, affirm effort, and remind the group that healing is a process. It's not a linear path. After the check-in, you'll do a brief review of what was covered in the last session. Like I mentioned last week, the purpose of this isn't to quiz people or make sure they remember or repeat information for repetition's sake, but to gently reinforce learning. When people hear and revisit ideas multiple times, it becomes easier to access them later, especially in moments of stress. Repetition helps the brain build new, healthier pathways, which is particularly important in trauma recovery. Next, you'll have participants pair up, like last week, and share one high and one low from the week. When they share the low, you'll remind them to use the same 3 questions they've already practiced. What happened? How did you feel? And what was the hardest part? You won't need to reteach this at this point, just a simple reminder is enough. Next, you'll introduce the idea of Wise Mind. Have participants pull out their packets and find the Wise Mind diagram and hold up your own so they know what you're looking at together. You will explain that in moments of stress, overwhelm, or crisis, most of us tend to respond in one of 2 common ways. The first is what we call emotional mind, sometimes described as thinking hot. This is when emotions take over so strongly that it's hard to think clearly. We may react quickly, say things we don't mean, make decisions without really considering the consequences. Emotional mind isn't bad, it's human, but when it's running the show by itself, it often leads to outcomes we later regret. The second response is reasonable mind, or thinking cool. This is when we try to handle everything through logic and problem solving while pushing emotions aside. In this state, people may appear calm or in control on the outside, but inside their emotions are being ignored or minimized. Over time, these unacknowledged emotions tend to build up and often come out later in unhealthy or unexpected ways. Living only in emotional mind or in reasonable mind can both be exhausting and unsustainable. Neither one gives us the balance we need, especially after trauma or loss. That's why our goal is not to eliminate emotions or ignore logic, but to learn how to bring them together, which is going to bring us to Wise Mind. Wise Mind is the place where our thoughts and our emotions work together rather than against each other. It's where we acknowledge both what we're feeling and what we're thinking to determine how to respond. When we're in Wise Mind, we're more likely to make decisions that align with our values and express emotions in ways that are healthier and safer for ourselves and others. So the goal here is to move towards wise mind, integrating our thoughts and our feelings. So the question, of course, is how do we do that? One way we can move towards wise mind is by practicing attentiveness. Attentiveness is simply the ability to notice what's happening inside us without judgment. It means learning to recognize our emotions, name them, allow ourselves to feel them, and accept them as they are. This doesn't mean we act on every emotion or let them control us. It simply means, one, we stop fighting or criticizing ourselves for having these emotions, and two, we learn to acknowledge what they are and grow in our comfort sitting with them, even the hard or painful ones. Eventually, we do want to find appropriate and healthy ways to express our emotions, but that can only happen after we learn to notice and understand what we're feeling in the first place. Attentiveness helps us slow down enough to do just that. So you can summarize all of this by reminding participants that when we practice attentiveness, we begin to recognize our emotions, accept them until the intensity eases, and then decide how to use that energy of those emotions wisely. This is a skill. And like any skill, it takes practice, but it gives people a pathway towards balance, clarity, and healthier responses over time. So the tool today that we're going to use to begin the work of attentiveness is the attentiveness flower exercise. This activity helps people practice noticing what's happening inside them without trying to fix it, analyze it, or push it away. The goal isn't insight or change right away, it's just simply awareness. So you're going to ask the participants to take out their packet and find the flower page. Invite them to write their name in the center. You can also point out the feelings chart in the packet, letting them know they're welcome to use it as a support or as a tool if they need help finding words for what they're feeling. You'll then explain that you're going to take 5 minutes of silence to practice attentiveness together. During this time, participants are invited to gently notice what they're thinking or what they're feeling. Each time they notice a thought, an emotion, a feeling, they'll write a single word that represents it somewhere on the flower. If they feel sad, they can write sad. If they feel angry, they can write angry. If their mind wanders to something practical like what they're going to cook for dinner, they can write that down too. There are no right or wrong answers about what people are thinking or feeling. And here, it's important to note and to normalize that everyone's experience will be different. Some people may notice many thoughts and feelings during the 5 minutes, while others maybe will notice only one or two. Both are completely okay. The goal is not to notice more, but to practice noticing anything at all and being aware of what's happening. You can remind participants if they start to feel stressed or overwhelmed or nervous, they can gently return to deep breathing and allow their bodies to settle before continuing. You'll also encourage them not to judge themselves for what shows up. Thoughts and emotions aren't good or bad, they're simply information. Part of attentiveness is trusting that the mind and body are processing experiences in their own way, and we want to become aware of what's going on inside us. Before starting, you can remind them that they are free to write down anything they notice without censoring or correcting themselves. We're not going to share these. It's just important for them to know that there's freedom and safety to be honest with themselves. Then you'll ask if there are any questions, invite everyone to close their eyes if that feels comfortable, set a 5-minute timer, and begin. When the timer ends, you'll gently bring the group back together for a brief discussion. You might ask whether anyone was surprised by something they noticed, or how it felt to allow thoughts and emotions to come and go without judgment. This helps participants reflect on the experience and reinforce that awareness, not perfection, is the goal. After the attentiveness flower, you'll introduce the red light, green light exercise. This activity helps participants think about how they respond to stress and reminds them that while we can't control our emotions, we do have some choice in how we respond to them. You can begin by inviting participants to pull out the red light, green light page from their packets and explaining that all emotions carry energy. That energy has to go somewhere. For example, if we feel overwhelmed or angry, we might yell, we might shut down or lash out, or we might choose to go for a walk, practice deep breathing, move our bodies. The emotion isn't wrong. What matters is how we use the energy that comes with that emotion. You can briefly remind the group that in week 1, you talked about coping behaviors. that may feel helpful in the moment, but don't actually bring long-term relief. In this exercise, those are called red light behaviors, responses that can temporarily reduce comfort, but often create bigger problems later. We want to name these behaviors without judgment, but build awareness for the participants of how they actually are dealing with the stress in their lives. You'll invite participants to work individually. On the red light side of the paper, they'll write down unhelpful coping behaviors they recognize in themselves. We invite you to model vulnerability with a simple example, but make sure you reassure them that they won't have to share. But I find it helpful when I lead this to say, man, there have been times when I have felt stressed that I've run to this thing and it hasn't been helpful. This is simply an exercise for them to become aware of their own tendencies. If they feel stuck, encourage them to think about what they tend to do when they feel stressed or upset, or what they did the last time they were really angry. Next, on the green light side, they'll write down healthy coping strategies they already use or some they would like to try. These can be tools from the group that they've learned or activities connected to their own interests and strengths. You'll give them time to complete this exercise, then you're going to invite brief reflections. Anything that stood out or felt surprising. This activity helps participants recognize patterns, reduce shame, and begin building intentional responses to stress over time. After red light, green light, you'll lead the group through deep breathing. By this point, some participants may be wondering why breathing shows up every week, and it can help to gently name the reason. We repeat deep breathing because regulation is built through practice. The more often people practice this exercise in a calm setting, the easier it becomes to access during moments of stress. I can't tell you how many times I now feel stressed and just find myself deep breathing. Deep breathing is one of the simplest and most accessible ways to help the body settle. Over time, it shifts from being an exercise to becoming a familiar, supportive response. Today, you'll continue using the phrases, I receive your peace, I give you my burdens, allowing the pairing of breath and gentle words to calm both the body and the mind. After deep breathing, you'll lead the group into the story for the day, which is a psalm. You'll begin by briefly explaining that a psalm is essentially a poem of prayer written directly to God, often in moments of difficulty. Many psalms were written by people who are overwhelmed, afraid, hurting, and they give us language and examples of bringing our full emotional experience to God, hiding nothing about how or what we are feeling. You'll explain that you're going to read a psalm written by someone who is crying out to God because what they're walking through is genuinely hard. Before you begin reading, invite participants to close their eyes and imagine themselves in the place of the psalmist. The goal here is not analysis, but presence, helping people connect emotionally to the psalm rather than intellectually. After reading the psalm once, you'll explain that you're going to read it again, but this time you'll add a simple attentiveness exercise. With eyes still closed, participants will raise their right hand when they hear the psalmist express a positive idea or emotion, and then their left hand when they hear or feel a painful or negative emotion. You can gently remind them that this isn't about looking around the room or comparing responses with others in the group. This is simply a way for them to help notice the range of emotions being expressed and to feel those emotions internally as they listen. Before starting the second reading, pause briefly to ask if there are any questions, then invite everyone to close their eyes again and listen carefully. As you read, maybe read a little slower or allow space for pauses so participants can track what they're noticing in their body and emotions. The psalm audio recording is intentionally a bit slower than the others for this reason. Afterward, you'll open a space for reflection. You might ask what they noticed while raising their arms, or whether anything stood out emotionally. You can then gently point out something important. The psalmist expresses both positive and negative emotions, sometimes really close together. Hope and fear, trust and distrust, praise and pain. This is normal, and it often mirrors our own experiences. You can normalize this for the group by naming that when life is hard, it's normal to feel moments of peace or gratitude mixed in with sorrow, just as it's normal to have days dominated by heavier emotions. There is no right emotional pattern. What matters is allowing ourselves to feel what we actually feel without judgment or shame. You can close this section by emphasizing the heart of this exercise. The psalmist brings all of these emotions to God openly and honestly. The invitation for participants is the same, to trust God with their full emotional experience, knowing that nothing they feel is hidden or surprising. This practice helps people learn that emotions don't need to be avoided or cleaned up in order to be brought into relationship and care. Then you'll move into the 4 questions we ask following our story. What did you like about this psalm? What was hard to understand or accept? How can this help me emotionally? And can anyone benefit from hearing this song? To close the session, you'll introduce the homework for the week. First, you'll invite participants to return to their stress reduction activity. This week, they'll personalize it by writing in 3 of their own green light tools from the red light, green light exercise you completed in class. Encourage them, once they're home, to choose which of those tools they'd like to try this week and write them into the blank spaces. Just like before, they can color or circle each box as they practice the activity with a special focus on deep breathing and their new green light tools. Again, the goal is not perfection, but building awareness and consistency in our behaviors during stressful seasons. The second part of the homework is to practice attentiveness once during the week. You'll encourage participants to set aside a few quiet minutes at home using deep breathing if that feels helpful, and simply notice what's happening inside. They can write down what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and anything they notice in their body. Remind them that there's no need to judge or correct what comes up, just to notice it and allow it. This practice helps reinforce the idea that awareness itself is a meaningful step towards healing. Before ending, again, you'll open the space for any final questions, confirm when and where the group will meet next, and then close with a brief prayer, thanking God for His presence with us in both the good moments and in the difficult ones. This helps gently ground the session and sends participants out feeling supported as they move into the week ahead. That's the end of session 3. I want to thank you for stepping into this work. Your presence, patience, and care are creating a safe space where real healing can begin. I'll see you guys next week in session 4.